because they've communicated, the agents have communicated. You can call, if you email, you need to reply and say, yes, I got it for that acceptance. But a phone call is pretty, you get somebody on the phone and you say, you got a deal? That's done.
Is that on any platform? Like, is that through social media? Is that through email? Is that through text? Is that all online?
So the offer, there's a page 12 of the offer has notice, and the way the commission words it is however you, like if you put in your email address, that's how I want to receive notice. If you put in your phone number, that's how I want to receive notice. You see what I'm saying? For me, the agent, man, I give them my address, my phone number, my email. You know, I want them to get a hold of me any way that they can. So technically, they stipulate the terms of how they want that acceptance. There is a little practice in your textbook on page 263. Does anybody want to read the example for us?
I'll read it.
Okay.
A buyer who is represented by an agent has presented an offer to the seller on Monday. On Tuesday, the seller decides to accept the offer. The seller signs the offer to purchase, and on Tuesday night, the seller's agent tells the buyer's agent that the seller has accepted the buyer's offer. Because it is so late, the buyer's agent decides to wait until Wednesday to tell the buyer that the seller has accepted the offer. Early Wednesday morning, the buyer changes his mind and decides to revoke the offer. It is too late. The communication of the seller's acceptance to the buyer's agent is deemed to be communication to the buyer. Because the offer has been accepted, signed, and communicated, the buyer can no longer revoke his offer. They are under contract.
Any questions about the offer and acceptance? So the North Carolina Statute of Frauds, we kind of touched on this a little earlier, said that certain types of contracts must be in writing to be enforceable in a court of law. So here's our contract for sale. Certain leases, they say anything under 3 years does not apply. So if you have a 3-year plus lease, it falls under the statute of frauds. And the purpose of this is just to prevent fraud. Because if you're just going on an oral, then you run into a bunch of he said, she said. The parole evidence rule. This says that a rule of evidence that dictates, let's see, I don't want to say this. So if you have, and you offer, your offer goes back and forth a couple times and you have changes, and you make a change and you cross through it and you have all parties' initial and date to indicate that this change happened after the original offer, the original paperwork that came through. This just says that the change will take over the original because all parties acknowledge that there was a change. So if we change the purchase price and everybody initials it and dates it, that's the new purchase price. That's what the court's gonna look at. I personally, I don't do anything, any oral negotiations, do you? If an agent calls me, I say, this is great, send me an email. So I have something right there. Is that?
Because just like your oral buyer agency agreement is not worth the paper it's printed on.
Yep.
What happens if Mike calls you and makes a verbal offer to you, and you are the listing agent.
Okay.
Mike is the selling agent representing Jennifer.
Okay.
Jennifer tells Mike, I don't want to write it up. Call her and just give her my terms. And he has to do what she says, right?
Sure.
So Mike calls you and says, my buyer doesn't want to put this in writing until you accept. Here are her terms. And you tell your seller, because we must present all offers, right? You tell your seller accepts. But then Bobby represents Renilda. Bobby emails you an offer, a full offer, everything, pre-approval letter or proof of funds, whatever he's paying. And your seller signs it before Mike sends you the written. Which one's under contract?
I haven't signed anything with Mike yet.
That's why we don't do oral.
That's verbal. Until it's signed,
Because it's real.
I got nothing. They send me something signed, my seller sign it, sorry, Mike.
Oh, that sucks. You're the not used.
You're the not used?
You not seen that Realtor commercial?
No. Oh, you, not you. Don't be like the not you. Oh, what is that, Realtor.com?
Yeah.
The Realtor.com commercial? You want to buy a house, the not used. The not
Wait till
used.
they-
See, squirrel. Thank you, Brittany.
I'm gonna remember it though.
The
This
not
is the
you.
not you.
Yeah, don't be a not you. Write it up.
Your agency agreements, they're considered employment contracts, so they're not covered by the North Carolina Statute of Frauds. However, the North Carolina Real Estate Commission says that it must be in writing. So your listing agreement, your buyer agency agreement, it has to be in writing. But just know that's the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. That's not a statute of fraud. Okay? Any questions about this? So the performance of a contract, time is of the essence. That's a drop dead date and time. It must be performed within the stipulated time, or the party that did not perform within the time frame is liable for breach. On your offer to purchase and contract, we have the due diligence period. The due diligence period says, the period beginning on the effective date and extending through 5 p.m. on, fill in the date, time being of the essence. At 5:01, actually 5 o'clock and 1 second, your due diligence period is over. It's a time is of the essence. It's a drop dead time. If there's verbiage in a contract that is not followed by time is of the essence, then think of that as like our target date. You know, we're all going to work really hard to make it to that date. But as long as both parties are acting in good faith and doing everything that they're supposed to, in the event that we can't get to that date, it's not a drop dead date. And again, we go back to your contract, and your settlement date says the parties agree that settlement will take place on, fill in the blank, unless otherwise agrees in writing at a time and place designated by the buyer. So your settlement date is not a drop dead date. But your due diligence sets you an alarm on your phone. 4:55.
Can you make your closing date time is of the essence? Or drop dead date?
Well, I'm not an attorney. Is that the answer you're looking for?
You can try to have. I mean, you can do.
I'm going to work really hard to get to that
But
date.
If the FHA people taking forever, or
Your lenders can slow
Yeah.
things up. If your sellers agreed to do maybe
Yeah.
electrical repairs, and they're doing everything they can to get an electrician over there, you know, you may have to have an extra day or two to get that work done. Or if the electrician gets over there and once he gets into it, he realizes there's more work that needs to be done. Again, as long as all parties are acting in good faith, you know, the seller's trying to get an electrician over there. The lender's trying to close on time.
I hope.
so,
Everybody's
yes,
acting in good faith.
I want to say you can have a time of the essence closing date.
You can. You just have to first talk to your broker in charge.
Yeah.
But at the settlement date, And on, what page is it with the 14-day
That's,
extension?
yeah, that's right underneath.
Mm.
There's
It's on
verbiage
page
written
12.
into our contract that you have like 14 days after the settlement date. So they allot for extensions, delays. Like I said, sometimes it just happens. You know, sometimes everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, and sometimes you just can't perform on the date. So you go for the next best available date. An assignment, this is a transferring basically the rights or the duties, but not the liability to a third party. So the example in the book they give you is, like if I had a retail, a commercial space, I sell shoes, and I have a 5-year lease with my commercial space, and 3 years into it, Rack Room Shoes comes and buys my little business. You know, Rack Room Shoes could take over the lease for the remaining of my terms. The only thing they've changed is me and Rack Room Shoes. It's just a substitution of the parties. And in North Carolina, the offer to purchase a contract is assignable with written permission from all parties. We also have a novation. Nova means new. So novation would be a new contract to replace the existing one. So again, back to my little shoe store. When Rack Room bought it from me, if Rack Room and the landlord wanted to enter into an agreement, then they could terminate mine and do their own new. They could put in a new contract, and I would be out of it. I would not be held liable for it.
Did you say earlier, I'm sorry, North Carolina and the assignment?
You can assign it, you can have an assignment as long as it's in writing. All parties got assigned to it. That would definitely be a call to your attorney. Get one of those on speed dial. So, contracts, several things can happen to them in the executory stage and the in-process stage. They could pull out. They could go to a closing. They could wind up at the courthouse for recording and come to full performance. They can also be breached. Buyer can breach. The seller can breach. We'll talk more about breaching in just a minute. But they can also be canceled. So partial performance, if one of the parties doesn't do everything that they promised that they would, that could cancel. That could discharge the contract. What if during the repair request, the seller agreed to these 5 items from the electrical portion of the home inspection report? He signed it, then he only did 3 of the items. It's only partial performance. He didn't do everything that he promised to do. You could have substantial performance.